One of the strongest recent pieces of economic data that a lot of people are looking at to say that the economy is booming and on fire right now has been the jobs report. We saw that there was 272,000 jobs that came out that just smashed everyone's expectations, and that must mean things are great and the economy's on fire. Well, not so fast. I want to kind of go over today how messed up the job market really is, and I have some real world examples and some data I want to share with you guys that shows you that this job market is basically crashing right now, even though on the surface with how many jobs are being created, it looks like it's better than ever, which is very deceiving right now. So the first thing I want to point to is that the unemployment data continues to tick up and tick up. It just hit 4% in May, and it was riding in the mid threes for a while there and steadily kind of rising, but now it's at 4%, and we're starting to see the highest level of jobless claims that we've seen in almost a year. The initial jobless claims surged by 13,000, and it's up to 242,000 the week ending June 8th, okay? And the economists who were polled on this expected that the jobless claims would fall to 225,000. So it actually went up to 242,000. So that just goes to show you how off everything is with where people think it's going and where it's actually heading right now. And then we have unemployment that just hit 4%. And you can say, well, that's not in danger territory yet, which is true, it isn't. But explain this to me, guys. The jobs report came out, a home run at 272,000 new jobs, yet the unemployment rate is going up. Doesn't that sound like a contradiction to you? Because it does to me. And the reason for that is because you have more people than ever working multiple jobs. Just like I showed you in my last video about the economy, we literally have data showing that people are working multiple jobs right now just to make ends meet. And by the way, if you're wondering where this beautiful location I'm at is today, this is the Arboretum in Champaign, Illinois, and I'm going to be filming my videos in Illinois for the next couple of weeks. I'm going to be here. My sister's getting married this weekend, and I'm going to be in Illinois until the end of June. So all my videos are going to be in Illinois up until I get to California in July. And real quick, guys, I just have to say I am so happy I'm not in Miami right now. Take a look at this clip of how bad the flooding and rain has been over the past couple of days there. In fact, our governor in Florida just issued a state of emergency for all of South Florida because the flooding and the rain has been so bad. So talk about escaping for summer just in the nick of time. I'm so grateful I'm not there right now. It's nice that I got out of there, but at the same time, I must have brought the Miami heat with me to Illinois because it's like 90 degrees here today, which is kind of rare for this area, especially in June. But hey, last year I brought the hurricane to Southern California. This year I'm bringing the Miami heat to Illinois. So all this data about the unemployment is signaling to the Fed that maybe the labor market is starting to weaken, but at the same time, they're getting the jobs report making it look like it's not. So who knows how these guys are even interpreting this? Well, we know that they didn't cut interest rates at their meeting this week, and now they're predicting that there's probably only going to be one rate cut this year, which I wouldn't be surprised if there's none, guys. Like, we have been talking about this since the beginning of the year, and as time keeps going by, it seems like there aren't going to be any rate cuts. Even if there is just one, what is that really going to do? And here's the other crazy thing. Unemployment already hit 4%, and it is now the middle of 2024. And earlier this year, the Fed said there was going to be multiple rate cuts. Now they're saying there's only going to be one. So you can already see that you can't take what they say at face value. But one prediction that the Fed had recently during their meeting is that they think that we're going to see unemployment rise to about 4.2% by the end of 2025. Okay, so it's the middle of 2024. It already hit 4%. So they think it's only going to go up another 0.2% over the next year and a half with how many layoffs we've seen so far. That sounds like wishful thinking at best, guys. I mean, this is just unbelievably stupid right now. that people are falling for this and believing those predictions and numbers. I mean, they haven't been right about anything. They were wrong about inflation being transitory. They were wrong about how bad inflation was. They didn't even want to hike interest rates. They've been wrong about practically everything up till now. And of course, nobody's actually worried about the fact that unemployment's going up, even though the jobs numbers are coming in red hot. That doesn't seem to be a concern for anyone. It's just people like me pointing this out on YouTube, but if you ask any of the big economists or anything, they say, oh, this is just noise. Nothing to worry about here, nothing to see here. Okay, if you say so. But when I was doing the research for this video, I actually found a real life example, a story of a young woman who actually applied for 200 jobs over the past several months and hasn't been able to get the job that she's been trying to get. And that's kind of interesting considering the fact that we just got this huge jobs report and supposedly the labor market is still doing so well. But when you talk to real people that are actually out there, pounding the pavement looking for a job, they're not landing the job that they're trying to get, guys. And honestly, if it were me and I applied for over 200 jobs, I would be out. I would not be applying for jobs anymore. I'd probably be one of those people giving up living in mom's basement, because that is just insane to apply for 200 jobs and not get one. So they talked to this woman. She said she was laid off 3 times in the last 3 years. Oh, that's a sign that things are going great. And the most recent layoff was as of November of 2023. Since then, she's applied for 180 corporate jobs, okay? And which yielded her only 6 interviews. None of them led her to getting hired. I mean, think about how demoralizing that is for somebody to apply for 180 corporate jobs, 6 interviews, no hire. I mean, I applaud her for even moving forward past this, because that is super demoralizing if you ask me. She also applied for 18 bridge jobs, usually which are mostly minimum wage jobs or very low wage jobs, and she also had 2 interviews and she also got rejected for those. Like, I don't understand this. If there's so many jobs out there and there's so many companies that need help, why are they rejecting people that are in desperate need and looking for a job, who actually want to show up to work and work? This doesn't make any sense. This whole labor market right now, to me, is fake and upside down when you hear about stuff like this. So, she's looking for the corporate job, which is a good job with benefit that actually is what she went to college for and will pay her the salary she's looking for. But since she's not able to get those and she's looking for bridge jobs, we're talking things like working at the grocery store, guys, being a barista at Starbucks, stuff like that, and she still can't get the job. I mean, who doesn't hear this and start thinking that maybe all these jobs numbers and the data surrounding the labor market is fake, or is not being reported properly at the very least? So things got so bad for this woman that she had to move back in with her parents. Her most recent application, she went back and forth, actually had 3 interviews for this place, okay? It was a role as a guest itinerary designer at a luxury resort down the street from her parents' house that paid $18 an hour plus commission, okay? She had 3 interviews for this job, and they ended up denying her for that one as well, because she lives right down the street, and they said they didn't want to hire somebody who lives in the neighborhood. Like, huh? What are you talking about? I mean, these excuses for companies that supposedly need help sound ridiculous. And it further reinforces this notion, like we've heard about, with a lot of these companies having phantom jobs. These are just jobs that look like they're hiring on paper, but when you actually go to get the job, it's not for real. Like they're having this whole song and dance and just playing games, basically pretending that there's jobs available when there actually isn't. And she said one thing that's been the most demoralizing for her is being rejected from minimum wage jobs, guys, which to me, I have no idea why she's being rejected, but it sounds like it's just a bunch of excuses from these people. There's no actual legitimate reason she's getting rejected. And minimum wage jobs, I mean, these guys hire illegal aliens, for God's sake, most of the time. They just put anybody in the position because it's just somebody that needs to do a basic job when it's minimum wage. But yet, this person who has qualifications and a college degree, who's essentially overqualified for the position, can't get it, even if it's just temporarily. Being rejected for these kind of jobs makes her feel, isolated and rejected. It makes you start doubting your self-worth. I mean, who wouldn't feel like that if you're well qualified for a position and you can't even get a minimum wage job? Meanwhile, it's like she's going backwards in life, living with her parents, not getting the job that she went to college for, not working in corporate America. And we know that the white-collar sector of the economy is really hurting right now. That's where you've seen actually the most layoffs over the past year. So that's probably why it's so difficult to get one of those jobs. But not getting a minimum wage job, it's unheard of if you ask me. Even during the 2008 great financial crisis, guys, you could still get a job at one of these minimum wage jobs if you wanted to. The problem is nobody wants those kind of jobs, so that'd be like the last resort. But now you can't even get hired at the last resort. So what's she doing instead? Well, she has started freelancing for a construction company. She's still applying for jobs, but she said she's never worked this hard just trying to figure out what to do in life. She feels like she'll never stop looking for jobs because any job that she does get doesn't last. Because remember, she was laid off 3 times in the last 3 years. And none of that to me is a sign of a strong economy like we keep being told. And here's the other thing. Not only does this woman's story prove that the job market is completely in the toilet right now, but it also proves my theory that people are not filing for unemployment when they get laid off. So this uptick in unemployment that we're seeing is way understated. Like, think about this. Unemployment's going up right now, but it's not going up nearly as much as it should. Because somebody like this, who's literally been laid off 3 times in the past 3 years, is not on unemployment. She's doing freelance work just to get by and have some income, but she's not on unemployment. So people like this are doing gig work, they're doing freelance work, and it's faster and easier to make ends meet and get money right away without filing for unemployment. And so on the one hand, it's great that these type of opportunities exist in the economy today that didn't really exist during the great financial crisis, but it shows you the problem with how the government and how the Fed is collecting and analyzing this unemployment data, because it's going up, but it should be skyrocketing right now because there's so many other people out there like her that cannot get jobs, and when they get one, they get laid off sooner than later. Pretty hot today, so the birds are just here chilling in the shade just like me. But you just have to stop and think, what would the unemployment rate actually be if people did not have access to sites like Upwork and Fiverr, where you can get freelance work today, essentially, or we didn't have gig jobs like Instacart and Lyft and Uber Eats and all these different things that people can literally sign up for and start driving for tomorrow and start making money? Like, where would this be right now with unemployment if those opportunities weren't available? And these type of stories just prove how much those type of jobs are just propping up the economy right now. Those people are able to barely scrape by and make enough money they need to make ends meet, but by no means are they thriving like we keep being told. And also, we got the inflation data, this week, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we know it's all a bunch of BS anyhow. But here's the thing. Inflation is sitting at 3.3% right now, and even though it's supposedly going down, right, it's still higher than it was at the beginning of this year. In January, we started out with a 3.1% CPI. Now it's at 3.3%. And yet the government is celebrating this and thinking that, oh, inflation's coming down, things are moving in the right direction. No, it isn't. It's actually higher than it was at the beginning of the year. So it's actually not going in the right direction. And the worst part about it is the shelter inflation is way up, guys. And this has been probably the biggest issue with inflation for a while now. And right now, the shelter inflation is up 5.4% as of the May numbers. That is way above how fast wages are rising or anything else is going up to keep up with the cost of living. And that's just one piece of the inflation data alone, but we know that housing has been way too expensive for way too long. Most people aren't getting a 5.4% increase. I think the wage data that we just covered the other day was what, a 0.4% increase in the month of May. But shelter inflation alone, without anything else, we're not talking food, gas, anything else that people normally need, insurance, just shelter alone's up 5.4%. So you're telling me that the wages going up 0.4% or 14 cents is really going to make a difference for people? It's not. And it's why people are going broke. It's why everyone's taking on a tremendous amount of debt. And it's why this economy actually sucks, even though we're being told that it's great. And when you ask regular people about this, one of the number one reasons that people are upset with this economy can be shown in this chart. As if it's not bad enough that people's wages are not keeping up with paying for a roof over their head, it's also not keeping up with food inflation. Take a look at this chart here, and this is worldwide, guys, from 2010 all the way through 2022. And we're looking at the US, the UK, Europe, and Canada. What do you see here? The food inflation has gone through the roof. The indexes pre-pandemic were sitting around 100. Today, they're all hovering between 120 and 130. So we've seen a 30% jump in food prices alone since the pandemic, okay? And we know wages during this time have only gone up like what, 18%, I think the figure is. It's nowhere near 30%. So all of these basic needs that we all need, food, shelter, clothing, insurance, gas, has gone up more than wages. But nobody in charge cares, because on the surface, the data that they're looking at still looks good. Like these bogus unemployment numbers, like these bogus job numbers, like these bogus inflation numbers. They're just looking at that stuff. Like those are really the top three things that they're looking at to decide whether or not the Fed is going to cut interest rates, to decide whether or not we're in a recession, all of this stuff. But they're not looking at the reality and, you know, people's real world experience of what's going on with, like, this girl that can't find a job who's getting laid off 3 times in 3 years, and people not being able to keep up with these basic expenses. So with all this information, we know we're being lied to, right? Or at least the people in charge are so stupid and so naive and so rich that they are too blind to see what's going on the lower echelon of society. But it's important for people nonetheless to know how blind these people in charge are, or how much they are lying, because the more you know about that, then the more you can kind of hedge against things for your own future, I believe. You know, if you know that these guys aren't going to change direction anytime soon with interest rates, well, then you can make moves accordingly financially. And we know there's a lot of weakness in the housing market, especially. You know, I talked to you recently about how low the sales figures are. You know, they're at 1978 levels right now. We have mortgage applications, you know, sinking to the floor at the moment. So everything's being done to try to prop this up. The most recent thing was the VA is now allowing veterans to pay directly for real estate services. And this is in anticipation of the changing NAR rules that are coming up in the middle of August, to make sure that VA borrowers are able to remain competitive with traditional buyers, guys. And it's like there seems to be no end to the amount of things that are going to be done right now to the housing market to make it so that people can just continue buying houses, regardless of how unaffordable they are, regardless of how high the interest rates are. Let's just try to keep getting as many people as possible into buying these homes. And the crazy thing is, with the VA in particular, those borrowers and FHA borrowers have the highest rates of foreclosures right now. And, you know, they're begging the VA loan servicers not to foreclose on these people right now and to give an extension, because this is something I talked about since the beginning of the year. And I think that the delay or the pause on these foreclosures is over right around now. And now the foreclosures are set to begin, and they're still begging them not to do it. Like, they're just basically telling them, even though they're not paying their mortgage and they're not paying their bills, don't foreclose. I mean, that's how fake and artificial all of this is right now. And I think that's probably why a lot of people think it's all really going to fall apart after the election, because they can't keep doing these pretend and extend games forever. So they're probably just going to keep doing it for a few more months until that's finished, and then they're just going to let the whole thing collapse. That's where I think this is headed. And it's not just me that's so sick of this. Apparently, there is a congressperson who in the middle of May introduced the Federal Reserve Board Abolition Act. They want to end the Fed. And this is some of the most refreshing news I've heard in a long time. And I think that the odds of this bill getting passed is 0 or even -0. No one's probably going to vote for this and do this. But the fact that someone in Congress is starting to think like me and a lot of you guys right now and realize that the Fed is such a big source of all the problems we're having right now, that they're willing to put forth a bill that's willing to get rid of the Fed right now. So not only would this bill abolish the Fed, but it would also repeal the 1913 Federal Reserve Act that created the Federal Reserve System itself. So what this congressperson said is that Americans are suffering under crippling inflation and the Federal Reserve is to blame. During COVID, the Federal Reserve created trillions of dollars out of thin air and loaned it to the Treasury Department to enable unprecedented deficit spending. By monetizing the debt, the Federal Reserve devalued the dollar and enabled free money policies that caused the high inflation we see today, which is just a fact. This is not some kind of conspiracy theory or crazy statement. That's just what's really happening. And because of this, retirees are seeing their savings evaporate due to the actions of a central bank pursuing inflationary policies that benefit the wealthy and connected. If we really want to reduce inflation, the most effective policy is to end the Federal Reserve. Now, like I said, I think the chances of this happening are nil, but the fact that someone out there is willing to put forth this legislation is a step in the right direction. And maybe after enough people start suffering and you start telling your local Congress people that you want them to vote for this or we're not going to vote for you anymore, maybe we'll get one step closer to ending this criminal system and this criminal organization known as the Federal Reserve. Because they are the source of all of these problems, guys. They're the ones who are in charge of setting the interest rates. They're the ones who are in charge of monetary policy, deciding how many dollars are floating out in the system at any given moment. And they're the reason that inflation is through the roof right now. It's only been a little over 100 years that the Fed has been in existence, so it's not like they're infallible and they can't be gotten rid of. You know, we have a longer history in this country without them than we have with them, so I think there's still hope. But with how corrupt the system is right now, I think it will take a while for something like this to actually happen. But at least there's one person in Congress out there who is fighting for the little guy and realizing how much the Fed's inflation is crushing everybody right now. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.